So hi and welcome to another episode of NetSupport Radio with me, Mike Anderson. I am the Head of Education at NetSupport Group, and on this vlog, webinar, audio recording, podcast, it's all those things actually. But in this session today, I'm really delighted to be welcoming Andy Earp again onto the show to talk with us a little bit about NetSupport Notify. So welcome, Andy. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Only seems like yesterday we were talking about all things NetSupport again, so really delighted to have you back in, sharing your amazing knowledge about our products and services into the corporate world. We're covering NetSupport Notify today, Andy, and so my first question really, particularly for viewers who may be thinking, what is NetSupport Notify? It's a really simple question, really. What actually is NetSupport Notify?
So NetSupport Notify is our really our mass notification tool that's available within our product range. And what it allows you to do is to send out instant messages to all your staff, to maybe your digital signage screens. And it's a nice, quick and easy and effective way of doing that. Not only is it quick to send out these alert notifications to your staff to keep them informed, or to send out urgent messages to them, but it's how it's displayed on those devices which is important. It displays really at the forefront, so it appears on the screen. It can be central, it can be full screen. There's multiple ways you can have that appear, but it takes focus on that screen so that everybody's aware and everybody sees that alert. So it's a really good system for allowing you to send out notifications to your staff and be happy to know that they have seen that and they were aware of that notification.
That's really helpful, Andy, because the thing is, when I first learned about NetSupport Notify, I was like, well, wouldn't an email do? Or could I not sort of use Teams chat or something like that? But I'm guessing, really, that it's far more useful and sort of trackable and all these sort of things than just sending an email.
Exactly, yes. So when you send out that message to your chosen devices or users, when you send it out, you can send it out with acknowledgement options. So when they click it, you'll receive a history of which agents have acknowledged that to show that they have seen that message that's appeared on the screen, and there is a full history of that stored, which can be accessed on the console, so you can look back on what notification messages were sent out, exactly which agents received it, and when they acknowledged that message. So there's full kind of history reports at the end so that you can keep track of all of that.
That's really useful. So we've unpicked the why it's better than email kind of thing there, and what Notify actually is. But another question really is what sort of use has it got in an organisation? You mentioned digital signage. Could you explain the sort of different types of scenarios Notify could be a useful tool to be using?
Yeah, so in terms of sending out notifications to your devices, so we've got an agent which will sit on Windows devices, Mac OS, and on Chromebooks. So they're the devices that can receive these notifications, and that could be staff users with laptops moving around the building receiving notifications. It could be standard desktop systems receiving the notifications. If you've got systems connected up to your digital signage screens, as I say, then they will also display these notifications. Now, typically the intended use was in a LAN WAN environment. So you would be using it in that type of environment where the console operators would send these notifications out to those devices to send out alert notifications. And that could be for, a fire alarm test is about to occur or something along those lines. So you've got kind of lots of different ways you could use it. However, we do also have customers using this across the internet. So if you did want to make the Notify server publicly visible, you could have your Notify agents off-site still also receiving these alert notifications. Now, it also is a mass notification system. So a console can be configured to point to multiple Notify servers. So you might have across your WAN, different buildings, different sites that you're supporting, and your console could be configured to point to a Notify server at one site and at another site, and you could decide where you target that notification. So you could target it just to a particular agents all connected on one site server or across all the servers, so it goes to agents located at both sites. And you can do things like sending based on the IP address location, which again is key. If you've got agents moving between sites, being able to target them, target your notifications based on IP ranges means that you'll target just the devices at that physical location. So it's got a really great use case for sending out and delivering these notifications, and really flexible how you can target those devices. A typical Notify server, we recommend a limit of 10,000 agents per Notify server. So again, if you imagine, that's a lot of agents, so you can support sending these instant notifications to a lot of devices, especially because you can have multiple servers all pointing to the console there.
So look, you're talking an awful lot about agents, Andy. Now, if I was a layperson and I was hearing all this talk of agents, I was thinking, are we talking like 007 here? Is it MI5? Is it just for those people who might be listening, thinking, what is an agent? What is a console? People have probably got an idea of what a server is and those sort of things. But could you just spend a moment just explaining what those sort of key terms are, please?
Yeah, sure. So the terminology we use for NetSupport Notify is essentially there are three main components: your console, your server, and your agent. Now, the agent is what would be installed on your staff devices, and that's the component that's going to receive and display the notifications. So that's what you're going to be sending the notifications to. So you're delivering the notification to your agent devices. The server is the central component in the middle of that, really. So your agents are all configured to point back to the Notify server, and that is the mechanism you use to deliver the notifications to them. So that's really the backbone of the system. And then the console is your people that are going to be sending the notifications. So they're going to be the ones choosing what's in the message, what caption text, what message information you're going to include, and who to deliver that to. They're going to be using the console interface to send those notifications.
Cool. Well, thanks for clearing that up. Because I had visions of people running around with, PP Walther Ks and all sorts of stuff around businesses, and clearly we really don't want that. Unless, of course, it's a data firing range, but that's something completely different. So it sounds like Notify is really, really useful. And I'm guessing you can use it for things like, making people aware that they need to be logged off by a certain time, or, worst case scenario, there might be, in our school environments, for example, we talk about if there's a sort of stranger on site and using it and notifying people, those sort of things. Yeah, all that sort of thing. Have you got any other sort of corporate kind of examples for how it could be used in the sorts of messages that people might our customers sort of tend to send?
So it really depends. I mean, obviously with the COVID situation, people were sending it out to remind people to regular hand washing and to use the kind of hand sanitizers and things. So you could use it for sending out, well-being notifications to ensure that people are keeping up to date with their health and safety. Fire alarm test is always a good one and a regular one. But I've seen customers use it for the lunchtime van turning up. So, the lunchtime van turns up, so they want to send out a notification to staff to make them aware that, it's in the car park waiting for them to go get their lunch. So that's, as you say, it can be used for those emergency scenarios to keep staff informed, if there is an intruder on site, or if something is occurring on site that the staff need to be made aware of urgently, maybe a lockdown scenario. But it can also be used for those, more quirky ones, which is, just keeping people informed of, maybe there's going to be maintenance in a particular area during the day, and maintenance team's going to be coming in. So please, that area is going to be off limits for X amount of time. You could send a message to say, yep, that area is now off limits. And then you could send a message later to say that area is now back open again. So lots of different uses for Notify.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that, Andy. Look, one of the things that I'm always really proud of when I'm out talking to businesses or with our education clients as well is how I was talking with somebody just a week ago, and they were saying how great the tech support is at NetSupport if things aren't working quite so well. Which is obviously because that's something that you take some responsibility for. So, kudos to you and the team, Andy. But something else which people always say about is how easy it is to onboard and get on and use our software, which is great from an implementation point of view and how it sort of works out of the box and things. But could you just spend a moment just talking through with us how you go about sort of deploying and configuring these agents and consoles, please? Is that okay?
Yeah. So certainly. So we supply with the software to installers. Now, those installers is in the format of a setup.executable or as an MSI installer. Typically, if you were doing a local installation, maybe just a small environment where you need to install this, you would use the setup.exe to install onto those devices, and you can choose which component to install when you run the installer. If you're doing more a mass deployment, you can deploy the software using the MSI installer, and you might choose to do that with Active Directory Group Policy, where you would pair the MSI installer with the license file and a ini file to tell it which components to install, and then with a configuration file to tell it where to point to the Notify server. So you could do that with Active Directory Group Policy. Some people might choose to do that with SCCM, very similar in terms of how you would package up NetSupport Notify. Other customers are moving towards more Intune deployments. So again, you could push the software out using Intune. There's various methods. You could do that as a Win32 app or as a line of business app. So there are different methods available in Intune to allow you to push that out. And that allows you to push out the components and install that on those devices. You could also predefine the configuration again. If you're using an on-prem Active Directory, you could do that with the group policy template files that we supply the software. If you're doing that with Intune, you could do that with the configuration profile. So you can ingest the ADM template files that we supply the software into Intune to again apply your configuration to the agent or to the consoles. So yeah, there are mechanisms available. You could also do that. There is a built-in deploy tool in NetSupport Notify as well. Again, for smaller deployments, that's really nice to have that option available. But there's lots of third-party deploy tools out there. So we supply silent install commands and other methods that you could use to deploy that. So yeah, typically it should be a way to do it with the tool the customer's using.
Brilliant, and that's just so useful for if you're listening and watching now. Hopefully that sort of gives you a bit of peace of mind that it's going to be dead easy for you to get all those sort of things set up. And as I mentioned before, if things that aren't working quite as well as you might have thought, then our award-winning support at NetSupport with the team and Andy are always more than happy to help. So great to learn how sort of simple it is. Another thing that I really love about our software, Andy, is that it can help people with responsibility for IT asset management and all these different things and communications and messaging like you're talking about here on Notify. It can really help people make their lives easier. And one of the things you can do with Notify is schedule and automate some of these regular messages that you might want to send out. Could you just spend a moment sort of talking through a little bit about how you go about actually automating and scheduling the sending of notifications with Notify?
Sure. So within the Notify console, there is a scheduling component. So if you've got regular messages that you need to send out, rather than having to type them each time, and there is a reuse option, so you can pin messages, so it is easy to reuse the same message each time. But if you want to put more kind of automation and scheduling with that, when you create a message, so you decide your message options, you decide on your message text, then you've got the ability to then choose to either send that now or send that on a scheduled basis, where you could choose, your scheduled time and date and how long you want that to occur for. And that would appear on a calendar in the Notify system. So you can see when that message is going to be sent, and you can look back, you can pause that scheduling. So there's a lot of options within there. Alternatively, you can go through into the actual scheduling option and do it straight from there as well. So there's a few different ways that you can set up the scheduling within the console. And what some other customers would do as well, which is more about automating the messages, is we have this COM object available within NetSupport Notify. So you could actually send notification messages using scripts. And this is something that you might want to tie in with a third-party system that might trigger an alert to be sent. I've used it to set up shortcut icons on desktops for customers, so they just double click on the shortcut, and then that sends the predefined message to the devices. So there is scripting available that you could perform outside, and you could maybe use the Windows Task Scheduler to send that at a time as well. So there are different mechanisms available. The COM object is probably the more advanced way of doing it, but a little bit more customizable in what you can do, but you've got the built-in scheduling, which is easier and goes through the actual main user interface for Notify to do that. So that's probably the more common scenario that we see used.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Andy. My next question for you, because it's important, particularly when you think about digital signage, what we talked about before, that the messaging and things that appear on those screens are sort of tied in with the company's logo and color scheme and fonts and all those sort of things. So my next question for you really asks you about, are there any sort of customization options available?
Yeah, so we do. There are customization options available when you actually go to send your message, or when you're creating your notification to be sent. You can do things there, so you can decide on the size of the notification, whether it's going to be full screen, double size, where it's going to appear on the end user's screen. So you've got customizations there. Acknowledgements options, are you going to put a timeout on it? Is it going to have an audio sound play? So you can decide on those kind of items when you're actually putting the message together, which is just what you would do just before you're about to send it. But you can also, prior to even getting to that, there is a customizations area in the console where you could do things like change the notification type name. So we include a number of notification types built into the system, which could be used, for an urgent message, a technical message, a well-being message, and you can choose the names for those, so you can customize those. Maybe you don't want to use the built-in naming scheme for those, so you can go through and change those. You can change the colors associated with those on the bar at the bottom or on the caption bar at the top. So you can choose that there to reflect that. You can change the fonts, the font size. You could also put a company logo on there as well. So when the message pops up, the end user isn't going to question, oh, is that something that's been sent to me? Or is it something that, where's that come from? But if it's got the company branding on there, obviously they will see that and go, okay, yeah, that is an official message that's come through. So there is a lot of customization in there, and that will all get pushed down to the agent. So the console operator can decide on those.
That's really good to hear, Andy. And I'm just thinking about, because Notify can send out messages to literally, every user via their devices across your organization. There's a potential for mischief there, or misdirection and all these sort of things. So my next question sort of links into the security of all this. So with Notify, can you secure access to the console? Because you really want to limit that access to a certain number of key people who can have the responsibility for sending those sort of messages, don't you?
Exactly, yeah. And on the server side, so on the server configuration, there is an operators tab available, and in there you can populate that with a list of operators that you want to provide access to the Notify console. So if somebody was to try and access a console, they would have to know the operator details to add the server information to then be able to send notifications. So in order to populate the console with the server configuration to allow you to send and deliver those notifications, you would need to know your operator credentials to do that. And you can then also, on the operator, you can choose to allow them only permissions to see certain departments. So your agents can be categorized into departments. So you could say to include only these departments, or to exclude certain departments as well. So as you say, if you're using this in a large scale environment, maybe you've got a few thousand agents all on the server. If you've got those in different departments, then you might want to choose that this operator can only deliver messages to these certain departments. So you've got some peace of mind there that they're not maybe messaging or sending things that aren't relevant to other departments. So you've got some security there as well.
Awesome, brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, because peace of mind and security is super important as well. So, another thing I'm sort of thinking about whilst we're talking, Andy, is about you talked about the reporting. You need to see who has sort of seen the messages, responded to the messages, all the rest of it. But the thing is, if you're in a large scale organisation, you're not going to know if John Smith or whoever else is not in on a particular day, and so a machine might be turned off, it might not be there, might be somewhere else, so forth and so on. So I've got a question for you related to that, really. And the question is, what happens if you send a message, a notification, and not all the agents are online at that particular time? If they're off for annual leave or off site and all those sorts of things. What happens if that actually happens?
Yeah, so when you go through and you're sending your notification message, Notify was always really designed as a tool that instant send out a message, and that would just be to any devices that are online at that time. And it's really great and effective for that. But we did receive customer feedback that they were saying that some of the devices that were chosen to be included in that message when it was sent weren't actually available when that message was sent. So there's now if you're on the recent versions of Notify, I think from 5.10, there's now an option so that when you go to send a message, you can turn on a include offline agents option. And what that means is when it sends that notification, if one of those devices was offline, but it comes back online within a 48-hour period of when that message was sent, it will still receive that notification. So you've got a time period there of, okay, 2 days is probably going to be relevant, and that message still might apply. So allowing you to toggle that feature on and off, and it might not apply to all messages, as you know, for the scenario of maybe a fire alarm test, you don't want that going to an offline agent, 2 days later. So being able to allow you to toggle that on and off as a setting is really nice. That's something you can choose, and then it will include those offline agents as long as they start up within that 48-hour period.
Brilliant stuff. Well, I think that's all my questions for the time being, Andy. So thank you very much for sharing all of that great information. I now know that there aren't James Bond types running around NetSupport offices and all of our client offices, and a really useful tool to use within your business, whatever the scale. So that's just going to be me now just wrapping things up. But I will just say, if you do want to get in touch and find out more about NetSupport Notify, then obviously we're on social media. You can get in touch with us via our main social account, NetSupport Group. You can see Andy's got that just there. You can obviously reach out to me on Twitter and other platforms where my handle is ICT Evangelist. Or alternatively, we've got live chat running on all of our various software websites through Talk. So if you wanted to visit the netsupportnotify.com/corporate website, plenty of information on there, case studies and talking opportunities with our sales team, where you can talk about getting access to a free trial so that you can have a go with NetSupport Notify yourself. But listen, Andy, thanks so much for taking the time to have a chat with me again today. Really appreciate that. And thank you for taking the time to watch as well. And we look forward to welcoming you on our very next episode of NetSupport Radio. Thanks so much for joining us, and see you on the next episode. Cheers.